I'll show you the chords that I was playing for this particular tune. Hello out there. I'm Jessica Stickler. I've been teaching Jivamukti Yoga for 18 years, and I know that because my teaching anniversary, my vegan anniversary, and my birthday all happen on the same day every year. On my birthday, 18 years ago, I walked into the first night of Jivamukti teacher training. So I get to celebrate all three things at once, which is such an honor and such a blessing. So already April is a big month for me. And I also had the great honor of writing this month's focus of the month. So I thought I would come on here and give a little bit of my sort of inspiration and insight. So just to start, with the title, Strength in Multiplicity, the broad overview is that I wanted to show how in these three spheres, that strength comes through multiplicity, not just through sort of individuality or going it on your own or sort of one type of strength, right? One type of person, one type of practice, one type of solution, right? So in the first section is hopefully evoking the idea of strength in diversity in terms of ecology and ecosystems and nature and the planet. This is pretty dear to my heart because I am a lifelong environmental activist, and so it's a special sort of heartbreak for me. And the second section is sort of about community power, community strength, and finding strength in diversity, in differences. And being able to pull together the multifaceted aspects of our communities in order to build a better world. And then the third part is about how we need different attributes, different types of strength to come forth in our practice at different times in practice. So I'll kind of go through, that's the rough overview, but I'll kind of go through and say a little bit more what I mean about those things. So the essay starts with the story of the goddess coming down during a time of like great darkness and drought, and even like spiritual wisdom had sort of left the human community. And so the goddess, hearing this, takes the form of the 100-eyed goddess, so eyes all over. She begins to cry, and her tears water the earth and create the rivers and streams and springs, lakes and ponds and oceans. And then out of that, life can come forth again. So vegetation, fish, birds, trees, the earth can grow again. And even when we talk about sort of evolution, right? Sometimes the way we talk about it, we talk about like an individual species evolving, like monarch butterflies evolved their wings to do XYZ, or monarch butterflies evolved to do this type of migration or something like that, that kind of focusing narrowly on how one species has evolved. But if we think about it, that's of course not how evolution and ecosystems happen, right? Communities grow and change together. And so we can't talk about the evolution of one species without talking about the evolution of an entire community of species. Just bringing in one extra factor, right? Butterflies, monarch butterflies in particular, and milkweed co-evolved, right? It's almost unintelligible to think about one evolving without the other. They evolved together and enhanced sort of one another, right? And that's, again, just moving from one species to two species. So if you sort of expand out that understanding to include the numerous birds and lichen and moss and trees and other things that co-evolved together, then you have then you can start to think in that sense of ecosystems being a community, right? The second section focuses on Durga's sort of most famous and beloved story, which is the story of Durga fighting the demon Mahishasura. And as the story goes, Mahishasura was so powerful that he couldn't be defeated by any one entity, any one god or goddess or being, right? But that bringing together all of these different aspects, all of these different strengths and powers, gives Durga this sort of unique power to defeat this undefeatable demon. And I sort of love that each weapon that she has a symbolic meaning. So if you go through, you can read how each one confers, for example, energy or wisdom or speed, or all of these different qualities all coming together as one. And if we zoom out, of course, Durga is an incredibly special being in that way. But if we sort of zoom out and we think about the greed demon that we as communities have to face, we're facing sort of multiple humanitarian crises, multiple environmental crises. There's a lot going on in the world, and from an activist point of view, it can seem overwhelming and unovercomable. And that's because no one individual is going to be able to do it all. Even the way we talk about activists sometimes, we tend to elevate and even reify certain individual activists. And what that leaves out is this idea that is just the pure fact that there behind each of those activists was a network and a community. And not only that, but there were often multiple communities working on multiple avenues at the same time, right? The example that I like to go back to again and again is Rosa Parks, who is very noteworthy for not moving her seat when asked to. And that was the initiation of what is known as the Montgomery bus boycott. Now, that was only one of many, many tactics that were going on. So different communities were, there was student groups that were doing bus rides. There was the bus boycott that was organized by another community. There was also a Wonder Bread boycott happening at the same time. There were marches happening at the same time. So if you take sort of the totality of the cultural shift that was happening at the time, each part of this sort of complex network of communities and individuals all bringing whatever they could bring to the cause, that is what shifted the conversation. But it wasn't just about one individual or one story. It was about the sort of ecosystem of collective work going on at the time. And you could say that for any number of activists, right? That for any one individual that we point to, there's always an ocean of different activists working in different ways, different avenues, all at the same time. Yeah. So that also reminds me that it's not just all on my shoulders, right? And to see where I can focus my energy the best, what resources I can bring, what ideas I can bring, and what networks I can already put myself into. Whatever your particular interest is, there's likely already a community at least starting to work on it. So finding others to work on the same issue with you is key to success, right? We're successful in our numbers and also in our diversity of ideas and tactics. And although we might sometimes disagree, it's all necessary, right? It's in a lot of ways like every bit of it is necessary. Black Panthers having lunch programs and marches over bridges and boycotts and student movements, it's all part of the tapestry of effective organizing and effective activism. The last part of the essay is about the Nava Durga, the 9 forms of Durga that are celebrated during Navaratri, and the different emanations through the 9 forms illuminate or describe the path of the spiritual seeker. So each emanation has a different quality that we as spiritual seekers will either need or cultivate to progress on a spiritual path. So, some of those qualities are like just faith, right? Faith that the practice will work. Otherwise, why would I even start? Patience, right? Diligence with the practice, stick-to-itiveness, energy. Sometimes we need to bring a little bit more fire to the practice. Sometimes we need to, clear out old things, purification, in order to make room for the practice. Even making time to meditate, right? Anyone who says I don't have time to meditate, we do. We have time. It just means giving up something else, shedding something else to make time to meditate, right? So sometimes that idea of purification or cleansing or letting go. Sometimes discernment, sometimes courage, that there's sort of these mini energies that are within us that help to sort of scoot us along the spiritual path. So one thing I just want to acknowledge straight out the gate is that I included a lot of Sanskrit names of goddesses and a lot of names of weapons and things like that. I by no means expect you to perfectly, you don't need to even necessarily know the specific names themselves. I assure you it's really more just about conveying this idea that each emanation is sort of like a piece of the spiritual journey for the spiritual practitioner. And so, one thing that comes to mind for me is, first of all, that all those energies already exist in us, and knowing sort of when to apply what energy in the moment, right? We all go through phases of our yoga practice. At first it's very exhilarating. It's very exciting. So you don't need energy because the energy is already in it. That's already like a part of it. What you need is consistency, right? So the wisdom to apply consistency, even though you're having this sort of exciting, like falling in love with the practice moment. Then once you have consistency, then you have to keep yourself from getting bored, right? So you might have to apply a little bit more energy to that phase of practice. For example, sometimes even faith in the practice, wavers. Like, will it really work? I've been meditating for a long time, and I've been doing practices for a long time, and will it really work? So we might have to sort of turn up the dial on the faith, right? Especially as we mature in the practice, I think it's a bit easier to kind of get a little maybe complacent or a little whatever about it. And so kind of reinvigorating oneself in the practice is a really useful tool to have. So anyway, as I said, I had this little inner conversation with myself when I was writing it about, do I include all these names or do I take them out? I wanted the names in there just so that, again, we could sort of honor all of these forms of the goddess as thoroughly as we could, and that we could sort of honor the tradition. But again, I don't think it's necessary to teach the focus for you to know all the names. That being said, I plan to post some more content about the different Sanskrit pronunciations. Maybe we'll even do a little Sanskrit verse together, but I'm going to post some more content about that. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe or follow me on any of the sort of different social media platforms, and I will be posting all throughout the month with extra materials. I will also be posting multiple playlists. I will also be posting multiple chants. So far I have 4 chants recorded, so 1 per week of the month. I might do more, but maybe let's just say it's 4 for now. I got a little ambitious. I'm also going to post a reading list, which you might have noticed there are a whole bunch of books by me. That's because I am a big reader. And before I sort of go through these recommendations, I just want to assure you, I haven't read all these books just in 1 month, right? I try to keep my reading practice going. I try to stay current with something. So I'm always reading something. But a lot of these themes come up again and again and again through different focuses. So a lot of these wonderful works I've used over the years many, many, many times. So please don't feel like you have to kind of like suddenly read all this by tomorrow, but I just wanted to offer some of my favorites. Devi Mahatmya is the text that goes through Durga's journey with defeating the demon. So it's always lovely to revisit that one. This book, Shakti, Realm of the Divine Mother, she goes through all the goddesses. It's a lovely read and very useful for this year of focuses. One that I don't have physically in my hands, but I highly recommend, is Shakti Mantras, Thomas something. I'll include it on the reading list on my website. Another great one for overview of the goddess, as well as mantras and stories and a lot of really good information. Some favorites for the environmental activist side of things and the ecology side of things. One of my favorite environmental activism books, Active Hope, which I use frequently, regularly. Another, Braiding Sweetgrass, a classic. I'm sure many of you know this book already. There's a lot of great anecdotes in here about sort of the ecology of systems, right? So even there's a beautiful, like we all talk about the mushroom, the mycorrhizal networks or something, but there's things that are even more interesting, like the fruiting of pecan trees that all happens at the same time, that involves all these complex forms of communication through pheromones and other things. Great one. I return to this often. My most recent favorite, Emergent Strategy, which kind of ties together my environmental activism, ecology interest, and as well as activism and community building, good community building practices in there, and all of her other books as well. This is another book about community activism, How We Show Up, by Mia Song. I just picked up this book. It's called Angry Girls Will Get Us Through, which is going to have stories of different activists along the way. And I believe it's going to make a case for anger as an energy of sort of direction and power, as long as we know how to use it, right? There's anger that's not useful and it gets in our way, and then there's perhaps a way to sort of channel useful anger. Maybe. Jury's out on that. Anyway, I'm going to post a whole lot of stuff on my website, and I'm going to be posting all month, so please follow along. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to comment or message me. I would love to hear from you all this month. So if you stick around, I'll show you these chords.